And I feel fine too. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Marz Theron. And this show is called Conspiracy Comedy News. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. And you're on listening to American Freedom Radio. Welcome. I haven't been up for a week or so, switching the scheduling around like that. So I got way too much to talk about. I'm confused. There's so many things going on. But let's see what's the most important today, okay? Today, who's that guy that's our president? Trump! Donald Trump! Is he still the president? I thought for sure they would have impeached him by now, but no, that's not for lack of trying. But he signed a stupid bill that they've been trying to push to, sanction North Korea, Iran, and Russia for alleged crimes against humanity or for stupid reasons, as you all know if you follow along. But something that caught my eye, something I really didn't care about or was paying much attention to, is old news. Let's talk about the old news. This has been kind of like thrown around a lot in the old interwebs, and so I decided to find out what's going on, because you got to pay attention to what's going on. When they start saying things like Imran Awan, and they say it with a straight face, and they write it down, I'm like, well, what's the deal on this guy? So, for you, if you're as confused as I am, I looked it up and I'm going to explain it to you. Don't leave. It won't take that long. It's kind of a big story in its own way. You got this Pakistani IT worker. His name's Imran Awan. Awan! And his wife and his two brothers. And they were working. These are Muslim guys. Not that I care what their religious affiliation is. But I might be concerned about their country affiliation, because they worked for Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Remember her? What a pain in the butt she was during the elections, especially. She was the head of the Democratic Committee. So a lot of things went on over there, as you may recall, that were quite weird and rude. Like they got rid of Bernie Sanders through all sorts of illicit techniques, which bring up reminiscent of how they managed to get rid of Ron Paul amongst the Republicans. So this is all a big picture of the corruption that is our government. So okay, those people, he, his wife, and his brothers, they worked for Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and he had access to the emails of every member of Congress. Hello, how does one person, because they work for somebody else, get access to all these emails of every member of Congress? And apparently he was selling whatever he found in them to the highest bidder, I'm assuming. Wouldn't you take the big money? He had access to virtually everything in the House Representatives, which would include classified material in the House Intelligence Committee. And allegedly he was sending sensitive information to the Muslim Brotherhood. Who? I didn't know they had a brotherhood. Yes, they do. The Muslim Brotherhood, and who have ties to all these alleged terrorist organizations. I don't think I'm telling you anything new, but they also work for Democratic Congressman Andre Carson, who also happens to be a Muslim. Not that I'm judging. I don't care what his religious affiliation. I don't care what anybody's religious affiliation is. So don't cast aspersions on my veracity. Here I am accusing my inner voice of yelling at me. Anyway, so this guy, he was on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and more critically, he's a ranking member on its Emerging Threats Subcommittee. That's the ETS, I guess they call it, the Emerging Threats Subcommittee. He's also a member of the Department of Defense Intelligence and Overhead Architecture Subcommittee. Overhead Architecture Subcommittee? I'm not really sure what that refers to. But I believe it's upper muckety mucks within the bureau there, the defense. Anyway, moving right along. The Emerging Threats Subcommittee, though, is responsible for counterterrorism oversight. So if this guy's a spy, which I think everybody's starting to allege, after all the mud that's been thrown up about this guy, which I'll go over in a second, but if he's a spy, well, that's exactly where he'd want to be, wouldn't he? Apparently he inherited this seat from his grandmother, which is odd, but not really relevant, but interesting, and apparently has used it to promote radical Islam, is what they're alleging in the various news organizations that I usually don't pay attention to. And he has interfaced with a lot of Islamist groups, including CAIR, CAIR, and INSA, INSA, and ICNA, and MPAC. These are Islamist groups that this guy, well, if the rumors reach true, he's sending them privy information. Anyway, so this guy got arrested at the airport trying to go meet his wife, Hina Alvi, in Pakistan after liquidating his assets. So it don't look good for his defense. And she, his wife, she left with a pocket full of cash months ago. She was allowed to leave with $12,000 in cash. I know it seems like a minor thing, especially with today's devalued dollar, but that's $2,000 over the $10,000 limit, and it should have gotten her arrested for a felony. So for those of you who don't know, if you ever go to plan to travel, don't take $10,000 of cash in your pocket. Or at least hide it very well in your luggage. Hadn't you seen a James Bond movie? You got to hide it in the lining of your suitcase. And don't take it on the carry-on. This is things I don't know. Why couldn't she just send it to herself in a vase through mail? I mean, come on now. Anyway, should have gotten her arrested for a felony. But she has friends in high places apparently. Upper muckety mucks within the government saw to it that they didn't arrest her, and they wanted to arrest her. They had her under custody, but they came in. I failed to write down the specific names of the ones who got her off, but you can see what I'm saying. This is all pointing to people in the Trump administration, the people who were there before he got there, or maybe, who knows? He's juggling around a lot of people. So yeah, and it appears, though, you see that Debbie W. Schultz, get it? I'm being so silly tonight. She was planning to continue paying Imran after he moved back to Pakistan. He was going back over there for at least 6 months, if you believe his travel thing. But he liquidated his assets, sold off some properties and everything. So he was on the way out. He was getting out of Dodge. I guess he knew that the noose was tightening around his little furry neck. And he had been banned, you see, from the congressional network of computers. But Debbie, his gal Debbie, she kept him on and didn't replace him, even though the U.S. Capitol Police said that the couple were targets of a criminal investigation, the couple being him and his wife. Targets of criminal investigation. And Debbie Sassy Sasserman, she was y'all are just being anti-Muslim. You're just being rude. It's just rude for you to say that. Because they banned him from the congressional network, that doesn't mean he can't come into my office and use his computers anytime he wants. Y'all are just being rude. Y'all stop that. That woman, those people, the upper muckety mucks of the political parties, they all disgust me. So anyway, they allegedly, the couple had hundreds of thousands of dollars waiting for them in Pakistan. Money that the FBI says Awan had obtained partly through mortgage fraud and had wired overseas using a false explanation.
Oh, I sent it over there because, it looks better over here in Pakistan.
Well, don't you want to keep your money in Pakistan? Yeah. So I can't imagine what that would be. I threw these notes together rapidly in order so I could let you in on the skinny. Just to go deeper into this a little bit, there's a public court documents filed in Fairfax, Virginia, in which Awan's stepmother accused him of wiretapping and extortion. Oh yeah, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Democrat of Florida, seemingly planned to pay cyber probe suspect and IT aide Imran Awan even while he was living in Pakistan. She hadn't taken him off the payroll. Oh, not until they arrested him at the airport. If the FBI hadn't stopped him from leaving the U.S. last week, he'd still be on the payroll. Public statements and congressional payroll records suggest that Sassy Schultz the chairman of the Democratic Party until last year, also appears to have known that Awan's wife also had, she said she was also an information technology staffer, that she had left the country for good months ago while she was a criminal suspect. In all, 6 months of actions reveal a decision to continue paying a man who seemingly could not have been providing services to her. Seemingly, get it? Seemingly, although he was still in the building wandering around and nobody was stopping him. And a mountain of evidence suggests he was a liability. The man long had access to all of Wasserman Schultz's computer files, work emails, and personal emails, and he was recently accused by a relative in court documents of wiretapping and extortion. That's right. So, the records, they're raising questions about whether or not he had access to computers, but why wouldn't he? I mean, do they have cameras in Schultz's office? Who knows? Maybe he knows where the cameras are parted, or maybe she knows how to get rid of the camera records, the tape, the disc, or whatever. So now that she keep him on staff after the ban, she also did not have any other IT person to perform the necessary work that presumably would have arisen during the months-long period. No, according to the payroll records, she didn't have anybody else. It was just him, even though he was banned. So she employed this Pakistani-born guy and his wife, refused to fire either of them, even after the U.S. Capitol Police said back in February, that they were targets of the criminal investigation. She said police wouldn't show her evidence against the couple, and without it, she assumed they might be victims of anti-Muslim profiling. Oh, that's all it was. So yeah, he got this trip. He booked it in July with a return ticket in 6 months, although he was arrested at Dulles Airport. His wife also allegedly has a round-trip ticket, but you pay for the round-trip ticket if you want to keep up the ruse, don't you? And his lawyer said he had informed the House of the plans to visit his family. So, okay, he's covered his butt. What else is going on interesting about this? So she did end his employment once he was arrested. Yeah, I guess you don't want to, the gig is up, as they say. The jig is up. The officer's insistence that his termination was prompted by the arrest and not the House Sergeant at Arms banning Awan and his wife from touching congressional computers or his 6 months in Pakistan suggests that he had boarded the flight without incident. He would still be on the government payroll. Does that mean that if he had boarded the flight as planned, the office would have been paying him for 6 months? They wanted to know. So anyway, the wife left under similar circumstances after withdrawing the couple's 3 children from school without telling the education officials. Oh, no. They were just going to disappear and be marked absent, packing up all her possessions and hiding the $12,000 in cash. His stepmother, Samina Gilani, you remember Samina? She accused him of wiretapping extortion, stating that Imran Awan did admit to me that my phone is tapped and there are devices installed in my house. This is from the statement. Imran Awan threatened that he is very powerful, and if I ever call the police again, he'll kidnap my family members back in Pakistan. Boy, the hell hath no fury as a stepmother scorned. Or this guy's really a bad guy, which is apparently. There's even more about this that's fascinating. They found this laptop in an unused crevice of a White House office building, and he wanted to steal it. Right? I mean, the police wanted to confiscate it, is what I'm saying. They found this laptop and use it as evidence. The Capitol Police, right? But Sassy-Wassy Schultz appeared determined the police would not see its contents, threatening consequences for the police chief if he didn't release it. I guess they're struggling. They're both over there and they're standing next to each other, or maybe they grabbed it and she found out about it. But anyway, there was a video. There was video of Wasserman threatening the police with consequences if he didn't release it. Even Fox News reported months later that she had blocked police from looking at the laptop, but had become open to negotiating with police, possibly turning over certain files. Yeah, I'll show you some of my cat pictures, as a former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was permitted to do, if you recall. That's what I'm alluding to. This is a long chain of corruption. Even Hillary, as you may recall, she was permitted to do. She was deciding which of her emails were personal. You know what I'm saying? I tell you, what's interesting is that I mentioned Fox News is like, all it takes is some partisan politics for the truth to come out in the mainstream media. As long as there's something that makes the Democrats look bad, oh yeah, and it's true. They don't care if it's true. They don't care if it makes the government look like crap. They don't care that it's exposing the fact that we live in a fascist dictatorship. If it makes the Democrats look bad, Fox News will print it. And the same thing with CNN. As long as they got some stuff that makes the Republicans look bad, right? Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. They'll tell the truth. So that's like, maybe once in a while, and I can't even be positive. I don't trust the mainstream media, and neither should you, kids. So, not to be outdone, a while back, a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was, a CIA director, Mike Pompeo, said, WikiLeaks will take down America any way they can. Oh, really? From your point of view, CIA director Mike Pompeo, I don't think they got a new CIA director, didn't they? Or they got a new FBI director. There's just so much going on, I can't follow it. But Pompeo said that WikiLeaks will take down America any way they can. Actually, what WikiLeaks can do, if people would rise up and pay attention to what's going on and care about the country, would be to take down our government, not our country, you child. Really, Mikey? You promise it's going to take down America? Oh, be still, my beating heart. He further stated, I don't love WikiLeaks. The CIA director says he doesn't love WikiLeaks. Well, they say the nicest things about you, Pompey. Why don't you love them? He said in the past, it's time to call out WikiLeaks for what it really is. A non-state, hostile intelligence service, often abetted by state actors like Russia. Yeah, that's what he calls them a non-state hostile intelligence service. What do you think the CIA is, Pompey? The CIA is a non-state hostile intelligence service. It's a private army owned by, the bankers. They don't act in behalf of our government. I doubt very much if anybody that, has the Constitution in their heart has anything to do with the CIA. The CIA acts on their own. They're over there making all them poppies grow in Afghanistan. Oh yeah. Is that an official governmental stance that we have in the United States of America? Can I buy stock in heroin from Pakistan? From Afghanistan? How does that work? No, CIA. Can I buy stock in the CIA? I guess if you buy their drugs, you're going to be investing in them. So anyway, he asked whether he believes. When asked about whether he believes Russia interfered in the 2016 election, Pompeo said, of course they did. And the one before that, and the one before that. Spooky, please. You see, this is why I do this show. You know what I'm saying? There's liars everywhere. The liars are on parade. They have their own personal liars club. Sheesh. Pompey says that the Russians interfered in our election. There's no proof. There has never been any proof. They've been saying it forever and ever and on and on and on, and they're still saying it. And back to the bill that Donald Trump signed earlier today. According to the article, it says, U.S. President Donald Trump reluctantly signed into law a bill by Congress that imposes new sanctions against Russia, Iran, and North Korea. According to the White House, that he was reluctant. Well, of course he was reluctant. He didn't like the idea, but I don't know if his reluctance is based on reality or not. But moving right along, Trump signed the bill behind closed doors and away from cameras. Maybe because he told him, look, you're going to have to put a gun to my head and make me sign that bill. They didn't want you to have any cameras with him having a gun pointed at him. Do you think that's possible? Improbable, probably. He had privately opposed the measures, according to insiders, and his aides had lobbied against them. What part of it, I'm not really sure, but I'm gonna explain more about that in a second here. Let me get past this stupid. In signing it, Trump avoided the humiliating prospect of Congress overriding his veto. So yeah, he probably, it makes sense to me. Yeah, that would be his motivation. It says, look, if I veto this, you guys are just going to override it, and because there's too many people voted for it. Congress, they passed this package last week. The bill imposes tough additional sanctions on Russia over Moscow's alleged meddling in last year's U.S. presidential election. See? That's what's going on in this frickin' bill. Did they put it in writing? Oh, and Crimea's reunification with Russia in 2014. They're still butthurt over that? Come on now. In case any of you kids are unaware, the Crimeans consider themselves Russia. It used to be a part of Russia. I can't remember which Russian leader put it off into Ukraine. It's some kind of, I don't know what their motivation was, but it's like, here, you can have it. It's kind of attached to you, this little testicle hanging down there underneath Ukraine that calls itself Crimea. It kind of reminds me of Qatar, which is another little growth coming out of Arabia. But those people the vast majority of them consider themselves Russian. They voted for it. They asked Putin to allow them to reunite with the Russian Federation. And Putin said, okay. And they voted overwhelmingly to do this. I think it was like in the 90% range. In the high 90s. So anyway, Trump's reluctance to sign this bill was clearly evident in a signing statement. Oh, he made a signing statement in which he called the legislation significantly flawed with unconstitutional provisions. Well, yeah, see, Trump's saying the right thing. I don't know, maybe he didn't think that the military-industrial complex was going to get enough of a kickback for it, or maybe he's actually got a brain that's slowly developing. That's what a lot of people say about Trump, is like that he's got the ability to learn. And so maybe he's coming along slowly but surely getting it figured out. But he's a puppet. So far, a puppet. But little things like this makes you question what's going on. I mean, what else is going on in the world that points to maybe things are better? Isn't the stock market at all-time high right now? But would you really call that anything to do with the president? I mean, isn't that, maybe it's just markets fluctuate? I think the stock market, like Bitcoin's at an all-time high, but those things are suckers games. They achieve their heights and their lows by market manipulation, by high-speed transactions, like derivatives. Like nowadays with high-speed computers, it's what it's all about. If you're not in with the in crowd, you're gambling. You're gambling, and that's just my 2 cents worth on those money things. Moving right along with this article, Trump said, "While I favor tough measures to punish and deter aggressive and destabilizing behavior by Iran, North Korea, and Russia, this legislation is significantly flawed." He said that in a statement. Even his writing sounds like him. Have you noticed? In its haste to pass this legislation, the Congress included a number of clearly unconstitutional provisions. Yes, I don't doubt it for a minute. But, a week or so ago, another little thing happened that it happens every 90 days that really should have influenced whether or not he's going to do anything like a sanctions on Iran. His administration notified the Congress of continued Iranian compliance with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. You see, the U.S. administration is bound by U.S. law to notify the Congress of Iran's compliance with the deal every 90 days. The Congress would then have to continue to withhold certain nuclear sanctions. How do you withhold a sanction? Sanctions are withholding. So you're withholding. The point these writers are trying to make is that they're not supposed to do any sanctions. And yet he just signed a bill that did sanctions. Maybe there's specific sanctions. You know, there's a lot of different, I guess there are a lot of different kind of sanctions. But sanctions ain't nice. Sanctions are cruel. I want to remind you, dear listener, that because of sanctions on Iraq, over 1 million Iraqis died from starvation, mostly women and children. So sanctions ain't cool. Luckily, Iran and Russia are in trade deals, and it's like, you know, they can survive. America is kind of a failing state, and I don't say that with any happiness. And hopefully, our government will stop being the crappy people. Yeah, they're crappy. They're crappy people. The puppets of the elite that they are, because they're draining us with all these sanctions. They're harming us as well as the country they're sanctioning. Anyway, the Congress would then have to continue to withhold certain nuclear sanctions. The Trump administration notified the Congress of Iran's compliance with for the first time back in April. And this is the second time the Trump administration has had to admit that Iran has done what it agreed to do, just it has been doing since 2015. Now that's got to hurt, but they're hoping nobody notices, right? Our media and our government, they continue to cry out to anyone who will listen. Oh, the Iranians are bad people. They're promoting terrorism. Liars. They're liars. We are the supporters of terrorism. We are the creators of these terrorist groups. The CIA, Mossad, and MI6 created Al-Qaeda. Tim Osman was Osama bin Laden's CIA name. He was our guy, and he didn't turn. He had nothing to do with 9/11. We put him over there in Afghanistan as our point man to boost up the Taliban, and things have been kind of going downhill ever since in countries around the Middle East, where they've been constantly putting these mercenary armies that we fund, train, and give them the munitions, feed them, treat their wounds. Did I mention I disapprove? I don't know is that clear, the tone of my voice? I can tell if I'm being sarcastic enough for you to understand that I disapprove of these bastards. So yeah, they're terrible people. They're doing terrible things. Oh, they won't let us successfully do a coup and replace their government again like we did with Mossadegh. They won't let our lords and masters, the Rothschilds, put a central bank. We want to put a central bank in there, and they won't let us. They're horrible people. We want to siphon off their wealth like we've done to every country on the planet. I think Iran is one of the last holdouts. There's maybe 3 or 4 other countries that don't have a Rothschild central bank. We have ours. You know, the one that people pay their taxes to? We've had that since 1993. In 2000, since 1913. 1993, I'm sorry, 1913. And they had a 100-year charter, right? Y'all remember, right? Most of you were probably pretty young back in 1913. But when they set up our central bank and created the IRS, we had this, they had a 100-year charter. So the charter ran out in 2013. And did the IRS go away? Did the central bank go away? No. Why is it? And nobody noticed. It wasn't mentioned in any of the papers that the central bank that had a 100-year charter, that their charter ran out and they're not supposed to be there anymore. Huh? And why didn't anybody notice? Did anybody pick it? Did anybody go out with a sign? No, nobody paid any attention. So yeah, they assist our victims in fighting back against our imperial expansion. They say you gotta hate them for us, or we can't look like saviors when we send in our mercenary armies like we do in every other country that resists us. That's the point of view of our government. The U.S. officials said the U.S. administration believed Iran was in default of the spirit of JCPOA. That's the name of this treaty that they signed, saying that they will not create nuclear weapons, and they haven't. They haven't been trying. I don't think they were trying at the time either. But the U.S. official said they're in default of the spirit of the treaty. The spirit. What spirit is that? The spirit of beaten down slave, of imperial expansion? Is that the spirit you wanted them to be under? You know, stepping fetches on their knees with their hands out. Please, please don't say to the spirit of a prisoner behind iron bars. Is that the spirit you want Iran to have? The spirit of someone been robbed by organized crime? That spirit? Is that the spirit you would prefer to see from your victims? They complied. They're in compliance. And this official also said that the Trump administration intended to employ a strategy that would address the totality of Iran's malign behavior. That's a quote. Address the totality of Iran's malign behavior. And not just focus on the Iran nuclear agreement. Malign behavior. What are they doing? They're not invading another country. Iran hasn't invaded another country in over 200 years. And that was some silly thing. I think they had bow and arrows and spears. Our country, on the other hand, for the last 200 years, has invaded practically every country on the planet. Well, I don't know, at least 70 some odd, and most of them more than once. We are the bad guys. And we are the pot calling the kettle black. And I'm not saying we, like in you and me, ladies and gentlemen. If you're listening to this show, it ain't you. It's our government. Our government. The bastards in our government. So, let's say, and not just focus on the Iran nuclear agreement. They want them to address the totality of Iran's malign behavior. Oh, really? Yeah. Let's review Iran's malign behavior, shall we? Mohammad Mossadegh rose to power, and by 1953, he had removed the British from Iran's oil fields. The Shah then tried to oust him, and the people revolted. This is the little bit of the history you should know about Iran, forcing the Shah to leave and securing Mossadegh as premier. But the CIA and the MI6, they were having none of it. They had their puppet, they wanted to keep their puppet. And just because the British got kicked out, then that created a vacuum for the coup masters. They pulled off this coup over there, and they put the Shah back in power. And that coup, right there, that coup, that was like the most famous and the first of many to come. That's like almost like the godfather of coups, if you will. At least in modern history. The Shah was actually a friend to Israel, and they were allies in the spy business. The Mossad were helped develop the Savak, S-A-V-A-K. That was their version of the CIA and what have you. Iran, they've had a pretty rough history since then. No thanks to imperial support for its puppets. So now they stand against imperialist expansion. So Iran is vilified and the elites pressed by our puppet leaders. And that's the story on that. The Iranian people, they don't hate us. They like us. They were running around blue jeans, and they had a very secular society. Iraq wasn't that bad either. Till we got in there. Same thing can be said for Syria and a lot of these countries. If it wasn't for us taking out their legitimately elected governments and putting in our puppets, our pathetic puppets. So let's see. Israel's military said the Tel Aviv regime plans to build a new field hospital in Syria to treat what it generally named patients, amid international concerns over the regime's support for the Takfiri militants fighting in the Arab country. It's out in the open now. It used to be a secret that the CIA, Mossad, and MI6 were helping these mercenary armies, but now it's like Israel's going to put a field hospital, and they're announcing it. There was one before, by the way, and now they're going to build a nice one, I guess, with hot and cold running hookers in there. Lieutenant Colonel Tomer Kohler told reporters in a phone conference, this is an Israeli colonel, that the hospital be located on the Syrian side of the fence, but on the Israeli side of the demarcation line in the Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory occupied by Israel. The fence, built by Israel, does not always comply with the line precisely. Of course it doesn't. They're kind of sloppy with their fences. He knew that Israel had delivered what he called humanitarian aid into Syria, but not for Syrian people, not for the civilians. Oh, no. It's for their mercenaries, including hundreds of tons of food and clothing, as well as fuel and equipment such as generators. Israel regularly hits positions held by the Syrian army in the Golan Heights, describing the attacks as retaliatory. Oh, they're retaliatory. Nobody's idiotic enough to attack Israel, you lying bastards. The raids actually aim to help Takfiri militants fighting against government forces. On several occasions, the Syrian army has confiscated Israeli-made arms and military equipment from terrorists fighting government forces. Even the Wall Street Journal recently reported that Israel has been providing Takfiri terrorists in Syria's Golan Heights with a steady flow of funds, that's money, funds, and medical supplies. September of last year, the Israeli daily Haaretz quoted Israeli parliament member Akram Hassoun as saying that Israel was directly aiding the Takfiri terrorist group, Jabhat Fatah al-Sham. That's the group that was famous for putting out that video where they cut off the little boy's head, formerly known as al-Nusra Front, another terrorist group operating in Syria. He revealed that an earlier attack by the Nusra group on the Druze village of Kadra had the support of the Israeli Minister for Military Affairs, Avigdor Lieberman. You remember Avigdor. He's a card. That guy, he likes everything. And meanwhile, of course, the United States has continued to bomb civilians in Syria. It's almost daily. You know, it's gotten ridiculous. We're getting used to it. Our jets fly over there, do bombing runs, and then killing dozens of civilians, destroying their homes, infrastructure, under the guise of fighting terrorism. That's what our government tells us. You know, they supposedly are supposed to be making nice with the Russians, what have you, trying to be helping to fight the terrorists that are also killing civilians. I'm visibly miffed. There should be some good news in all this. Let's see if we can find some, shall we? Let's look together. Let's see. The Pentagon. Oh, the Pentagon. The U.S. State Department, the Pentagon. They prepared a plan to supply Kiev with lethal defensive weapons and are seeking White House approval. U.S. military officials say the arms, including anti-tank missiles. This, I'm talking about, what am I talking about? The Donetsk. Ukraine. I'm talking about the Ukraine, right? So the Ukrainians, which by the way, this is Soros's favorite, his personal kingdom, George Soros. I mean, it's like when you get to be one of these uber rich people, you want to have your own country, which explains the invasion of Palestine. The Rothschilds wanted to have their own country, so now they own Palestine. Soros wants to have his own country, so now he owns Ukraine. Right? Get it? So anyway, the U.S. State Department, and this is what they do, they get the United States to provide them the support, the military equipment, what have you, until they can stand on their own 2 feet. So let's see. So they're going to supply Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine, with lethal defensive weapons, and they're seeking White House approval. The U.S. military officials say the arms, including anti-tank missiles and other weaponry, are meant to deter aggressive actions by Russia. Excuse me, but Russia isn't doing any aggressive actions and haven't been doing any aggressive actions. Just like you're saying Iran is doing aggressive actions, so we've got to sanction Iran. I'm telling you, I disapprove of what's going on in the world today. But I think it's just Soros at work again, you know. Basically, the pro-Russian forces, you see, this is most likely why they're going to give Ukraine weaponry, because the area on the east of Russia, which is Donetsk and Lugansk, these two regions, I guess I call them like states. In American, we call them states, probably. They call them regions over there. They're cities, actually, but they're huge, puffy little areas like the eastern Ukraine. They call it the Donbass, okay? Now, this Donbass, they have announced the creation of a new state. They want to be to annex. You know, kind of like California is trying to annex from us. It's like that. You know, it's like that. Only that's on our western border, on the western side of our country. I guess the Californians, they say, the weird, this is true. There's the guys that, over there in California that are working on, I guess they call it Calexit. Yeah. When are we going to have a Texit? I'm in Texas. We should, I think, break this country up. It's been a failure for too long. So anyway, the leader of the so-called Donetsk, it's hard to say that without lisping. Donetsk People's Republic, Alexander Zakharchenko, said Tuesday that, not this Tuesday, probably it was the Tuesday before last, that the region, along with similar republic in neighboring Luhansk province and representatives of other Ukrainian regions, they would form a state called Malorossia. Oh, that's a lovely name. Malorossia. We, representatives of the regions of the former Ukraine, excluding Crimea, proclaim the creation of a new state, which is a successor to Ukraine, Zakharchenko told Russia's TASS news agency. He says that we believe that the Ukrainian state, as it is, it cannot be restored. I know, they done messed it up. Soros came in as he brought in all those neo-Nazis. They're crazy over there. Have you seen the pictures? I'm telling you, they're crazy in Ukraine. And he added the people in Malorossia would later have the chance to vote on a new constitution. It was the term used by the Russian Empire to identify most of the areas which are currently part of Ukraine. So it's a callback to the good old days. I've been talking a blue streak about what's going on, and I haven't failed to tell you about the protests. It's time for the protest report. People are protesting, but it's not that much lately in the last week or so, but there was a lot of them prior to that. I haven't been on the air since, I can't remember, about 10 days now. But in Venezuela, yeah, opponents of Venezuela's president blocked more than a dozen intersections in the capital, but appeared to refrain from massive demonstrations. So yeah, it was gentle, but they're having a lot of hard time. I talk about Venezuela a lot because our country has managed through, of course, what we do, with sanctions, what have you, to take that country into the toilet. You know, Hugo Chavez held us back, and now they finally got enough puppets in there where they managed to drain that country down. That country, Venezuela, it's like it used to help us when we had like fuel shortages during severe winters. They would send us fuel. I'm telling you, they're like considered one of the. At one time, they were considered like the third largest oil reserves on the planet. So there's no excuse for that country to be poor. For their people are moving out in droves. They're getting the hell away from there, which is okay for the bastards in the banking that get rid of them, and they can acquire the entire country for pennies on the pound or on the peso, as the case may be. And they were holding up signs critical of Maduro, which is a lovely name for a president. It's better than Trump. What kind of a name is Trump? Why can't we have a nice president's name like Maduro? Huh? Is that asking too much? And I don't mean Clinton either. But anyway, moving right on in New York City. Protest. This must have been Sunday before last. Hundreds of people marched in New York City to express solidarity with the people of Palestine. Oh, I neglected to mention the Al-Aqsa protest. You're probably sick of hearing about that, but it's a big deal. They're protesting around the world, as a matter of fact. And they started at Times Square on Sunday. The demonstrators rallied toward the United Nations headquarters. They called for the end of Israeli occupation of Palestinian lands. Yeah, that was pretty much a rude thing they did. In the Al-Aqsa Mosque is Islam's third holiest site, and it's in a city, Al-Quds, that I think that's Jerusalem, right? And the Israelis want to take that. They really want to take that city down. They want to own that city and own the Al-Aqsa Mosque, because they consider it one of their holy sites too. So it's like we think it's holier than you think it, but it's like it's been occupied by the Muslims for forever. I mean, you could say that was the Temple Mount, but right now, where's the Temple Mount? Is it under the ground? You have to tear down the mosque to find a Temple Mount buried in the ground. It's ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous. I disapprove of religion in general anyway. As long as you can, it's just my point of view. You can do unto others they would have them do unto you without having to be a part of an affiliated with them. I mean, you can not kill, not steal, and not lie without being told by some pastor, priest, rabbi, or what have you, imam. So they're chanting "Free Palestine" in New York City. The demonstrators also called on people across the world to boycott Israel. The protests followed similar events in Germany, the UK, Jordan, Turkey, Malaysia, Yemen, and Iran. They held a protest in front of the Israeli embassy in London and set Israeli flags on fire. How rude! See, Israel fully closed off the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound to the old city of the occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds, to Muslims after a reported shootout back on July 14th near the site that left 2 Israeli soldiers and 3 Palestinians dead. It restored access to the compound later, but they put in metal detectors at the front and cameras, and the Muslims said no. No. You cannot block, you cannot restrict our access, you can't imply that we're carrying weapons, you can't do it. You're not the boss of me. This is a Muslim site. Israelis aren't allowed. I mean, they can come in if they're respectful. You know what I'm saying? Israel also has reportedly stolen a large number of confidential documents belonging to Jerusalem Al-Quds Islamic Waqf. That's a weird word. Anyways, they're an endowment organization, and they're trusted with controlling and managing the Islamic edifices on and around the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. So, they got to get something for their effort, right? The Israelis come in there and take the place over. They broke into chambers and cabinets and discovered all this paperwork that will now give them the ability to destroy the evidence that anybody owned the land before them. And that's what they've been doing ever for what, 50, 60 years now, 70, 80, depends on how far back you want to go into this invasion. Hassan Kader, the head of Al-Quds International Center, said on Monday that the appropriation had taken place over the 3 days that followed a reported shootout. Yeah. The documents comprise title deeds proving the body's ownership of a large number of immovable properties, as well as secret files bearing information on the mosque and religious courthouses. So, they feature data on around 90% of the properties lying in Jerusalem, where the compound is located. And they figure that they could enable Tel Aviv to confiscate the properties even legally, as opposed to the way they've been doing it generically, which is just to build a fence and kick everybody who's not an Israeli off the property, and then come in with the bulldozers, as they are wont to do, and then build whatever they want to on the ground that's left. Other protests in Peru, the miners went on a nationwide strike. I'm coming to the end of the show, so I'll just hit you with the highlights. And they were unhappy. 56 mines, they protested, a walkout last week, arguing that the reforms proposed by President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, excuse me, the president of Peru is named Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. I'm not going to touch that. That would make it easier for a mass layoff. That was last Wednesday, to weaken inspection bodies and loosen safety rules, and they're having none of it. Last Thursday, in the Moroccan city of Al Hoceima, defying a government ban, they started after a fishmonger in Hoceima was crushed to death in a rubbish truck last October as he tried to retrieve a swordfish that he caught, and they took it away from him and threw it in a truck, in a garbage truck, and the guy jumped in after it, and they crushed him to death. And so people protested. The organizers of the protest, they dubbed the demonstration a Million Man March. They stole our Million Man March name. And they vowed to go ahead with the protest rally despite the tight restrictions imposed by authorities. So yeah, they had demonstrations all over the country. And there was, of course, in Al-Aqsa Mosque, there was protests going on over there in Palestine. I didn't mention it, but yeah, they're pretty angry over there. So there's a lot of people out there. Here's an interesting one, a funny one. A plane pulling a banner reading, "Go home, fucking tourists." That's what it said. I'm not saying the word on the air other than the fact that it's written on the page in front of me. There was a banner that said that in Malguil-Canon, near Montpellier in southern France. Malguil-Canon. Anyway, the music's coming up telling me I can't be here, but it was a comedian, a guy named Remy Gaillard, who wanted to create buzz for his website. So he's doing some crazy things. So this is Marz, Theron. You've been listening to American Freedom Radio, and on here, and this is my show called Conspiracy Comedy News, and thank you for listening, and tune in next week. See y'all.